Much of human history, the high peaks of the Alps remained untouched by human civilization. There was neither the technology nor the free time to bother with land so unsuited for farming. However, with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, technology increased, as did free time, and the conditions were ripe for the conquest of the Alps to begin. Many of the major alpine peaks saw their first ascent in the decade between 1854 and 1865 in what is known as the Golden Age of Alpinism. The Golden Age is said to have been opened with the first ascent of the Matterhorn by Alfred Willis and to have been closed by Edward Whymper's tragic first ascent of the Matterhorn, which is our topic for today. Our story begins in 1860 when Edward Whymper, a 20-year-old English artist, arrived in the alpine town of Val Tournenche for the first time. He had been sent there by a London magazine to make sketches of the scenery along the Swiss-Italian border. However, Whymper, never before having seen a mountain, soon became enamored with the grandeur of the Alps and made it his ambition to climb the nearby Matterhorn. This was going to be no easy feat for someone completely new to mountaineering. The Matterhorn was the 6th highest peak in the Alps and one of the most notoriously difficult to climb. Over the course of 5 years, Whymper and a local guide, Jean-Antoine Carrel, made 8 attempts at scaling the Matterhorn via its southwest face. Each time they got a little further, but each time they returned unsuccessful. By 1865, the Matterhorn was the last of the great alpine peaks to remain unconquered, and Whymper was getting anxious that he may never be the first man to conquer the Matterhorn. He considered other routes up the mountain and found that approaching from the town of Zermatt, Switzerland, and ascending the east face was probably the best course of action, and promptly made plans to ascend via this route. This did not sit well with Carrel, who, as an ever-proud Italian, could not have an Englishman reach the summit via Switzerland. If anyone was going to do it, it was going to be an Italian ascending from an Italian town and claiming the mountain for Italy. Carrel promptly assembled his own team and took off up the southwest face, leaving Whymper stuck in Val Tournenche with no transport, no way of getting his equipment to Zermatt, and no way of ever realizing his dreams of conquering the Matterhorn. However, by pure chance, another English mountaineer, Lord Francis Douglas, and his guides Peter Tagwaller Sr. and Jr. had just arrived in Val Tournenche. Lord Douglas was an experienced mountaineer, and Whymper quickly converted him to his cause. They made haste for Zermatt and arrived a day later, setting up in the Monte Rosa Hotel. As luck would have it, there they encountered the famous French mountaineer Michel Croz, who was assisting 2 other Englishmen, the Reverend Charles Hudson and Douglas Haddaw, in their attempt to ascend the Matterhorn. Words were had, tea and wine flowed, and the 3-man party agreed to set out with Whymper the very next day. In 24 hours, Whymper had gone from being alone and stuck in Italy to having a party of 7 men at his command. The next morning, July 13th, just before the sun rose, Whymper's party set out from Zermatt, 2 days behind Carrel, but with an easier path ahead. They made good progress and set up camp for the night right at the base of the peak. The next day, July 14th, they ascended about 2,000 feet before reaching a much steeper upper peak. Here they changed direction, moving to the north face of the Matterhorn. Though the going was much tougher than expected, they still made good progress, with Haddaw the only one encountering difficulty. The party soon reached the last section of the slope, which was so smooth and gradual that Whymper and Cross abandoned their gear and ran for the summit. Others joined soon after, and realizing that they had forgotten to bring a flag in their haste, they flew Cross's shirt from the summit. At this point, Carrel's expedition was only 200 meters from the summit, having successfully navigated the trickier Italian face of the mountain. On seeing Whymper, Carrel and his party threw in the towel and returned to Val Tournenche, 200 meters and about an hour away from glory. Whymper and co. then began their descent. They move slowly, one man at a time, all 7 on rope, and this is where our story turns from triumph to tragedy. About an hour into the descent, as Croz was helping Haddaw along, Haddaw slipped and fell on Croz. Croz lost his footing and fell, pulling Hudson and Lord Douglas along with them. Further up, the Tagwalders and Whymper managed to grab hold of rocks. The trio stood firm, but their rope snapped, somewhere between Lord Douglas and the elder Tagwalder. The 3 had to watch as their companions slid down the mountainside, clawing for grip before disappearing over a precipice and falling to their death. What should have been a triumphant return for the 7 turned into a sombre march for Whymper and the Tagwalders, back to Zermatt to organise a search for their companions' remains.